Hello and welcome to Sierra-Cedar's second webinar in our series, Jumpstart Your Cloud Journey with Sierra-Cedar and Oracle Analytics Cloud. Please take a moment to familiarize yourself with the webinar control panel. There will be a question and answer session at the end of the presentation when you'll be able to submit any questions you may have using the chat panel located at the bottom. Today's presentation topic is Design and Administrate Oracle Analytics Cloud Essbase Databases. Our presenters are Jason Little, Vice President of our EPM and BI practice, and Jay Chapman, Senior Consultant. Jason, please take it away.
Thank you, Michelle. So welcome everyone, and we're building upon the session we had last week, and today we're going to get into Essbase specific functionality around the Oracle Analytics Cloud and talk specifically around how you build Essbase databases in the cloud and how you administrate Essbase databases in the cloud. Again, this is part of a 5-part webinar series, and wanted to highlight real quick in the next session, we're going to talk about moving your financial reports and web analysis views and other reports to OAC. And then the 4th and 5th session, we're going to dive into the Analytics Cloud from a business intelligence and data visualization perspective, and talk more about some of the reporting and analytics outside of Essbase that's provided with the Oracle Analytics Cloud. So we're looking forward to the 5-part series and continuing the discussions. Today's agenda, we're going to talk real briefly about the Oracle Analytics platform again, and share with you just some quick thoughts on what you can accomplish with the Oracle Analytics platform. And then we'll kind of talk specifically about how you manage Essbase applications in the cloud, multiple cubes, multiple allocation processes. We're going to talk about design options with the Oracle Analytics Cloud and how you can design it to work with Oracle ERP Cloud, HCM Cloud, other EPM cloud applications, as well as just options to work directly with any data source within your organization, from your financials to your supply chain to your sales and marketing, etc. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some migration considerations and just share some quick thoughts on how we can help you with your Essbase applications in the cloud. And the bulk of the session today will be focused on a live demonstration. Jay Chapman is going to take us through a live demonstration of the various Essbase components we covered here today. So real quick, as we discussed last week, keep in mind that the Oracle Analytics Cloud is a platform as a subscription. And the benefits of that is it provides you an entire platform for analytics across the organization. And it's really unique in the market right now from the standpoint of it provides the Oracle Database Cloud service, the storage cloud, as well as the ability to design different shape sizes with different CPU and memory to really bring data into the data catalog for business intelligence, and allowing you to do reporting and analytics, data visualization across multiple data sets, including it's built for Oracle ERP integration, as well as Oracle Cloud, Oracle HCM applications. So really unique platform with its data integration capabilities back to source systems, as well as its ability to deploy multiple analytic instances and bring data together, including Essbase. So with Essbase specifically in the cloud, what's different about Essbase in the cloud versus your traditional Essbase is you have more flexibility now to leverage data sync to bring data sources together. Data sync is an included tool with the cloud that allows you to bring data from multiple sources into Essbase, as well as you can still work with Essbase on a standalone basis and utilize the new administration tools that are provided for creating cubes and data flows, setting up drill through reports, as well as taking advantage of the new hybrid storage options and out of the box default hybrid aggregation that we're going to talk about. So the cloud solution, again, is on version 12 today, so it's the latest and greatest of Essbase, and it's really unique from the standpoint of its ability to integrate with multiple data sources, but also with the Oracle Analytics Cloud. And as a platform, as a service, you have all this included, and it really speeds up the process of deploying applications. You know, in our experience thus far, it's really just taken one day and we're up and running, whether we're deploying an analytics instance for Essbase or we're deploying an analytics instance for business intelligence or data visualization. It's, you know, one-day process. You're up and running, you're loading data, and you're building models. So it's a very quick to implement tool as well. So I wanted to highlight a few design options with Essbase. For those of you that are on the line, some of you may be familiar with the Essbase Analytics platform, some of you may not, but you really have multiple options. And the first being, of course, you can build your standalone Essbase Analytics applications for finance, operations, sales, HR, just like you do today. Those applications can be standalone applications that have their own load processes and calculation processes, or with the Oracle Analytics Cloud now, you can integrate those Essbase applications with the platform as a service, which allows you to leverage those cubes as part of your business intelligence reporting and data visualization. So it really gives you that, that flexibility to do what you do today on a standalone basis potentially and migrate your cubes into the cloud, but also take full advantage of the new capabilities to integrate it with the other capabilities in the OAC cloud. The other key thing is it's fully integrated with Oracle's ERP cloud solutions. So you can leverage tools if you're looking at ERP cloud or HCM cloud or other cloud applications. You know, this particular version is fully integrated with bidirectional data feeds, which is a nice feature for those of you that are looking at other Oracle Cloud applications. Also, Essbase has been known over the years sometimes as the world's best calculator, and it still is. It's just an incredible calculation engine to do allocations and profitability applications. So Essbase continues to be the market leader in that space, where if you have standalone large allocation or complex allocation processes, to really understand profitability, whether that's profitability of your business segments or profitability of your customers or profitability of your products, you know, Essbase continues to be that leading product to set up those profitability models within the cloud service. The other nice kind of design option with the Essbase Analytics Cloud is you can optimize it to work side by side your planning and budgeting cloud. And it really allows you to take advantage of the performance and integration benefits across the planning and budgeting space, which really gives you a ton of flexibility as you're going through the budgeting and planning process. You can, in real time, have mappings over to your Essbase Analytics Cloud to load your data and do more analytics with combining it with other data, as well as just performance. You can really optimize your planning and budgeting applications with integration into Essbase in the cloud. One thing too that we're finding as a unique solution, and we're offering this to our clients today, and working with one of our clients on a solution right now, is it also optimizes your financial consolidation and close process. Oracle offers a financial consolidation and close application that we're also implementing for clients. And with that, side by side, you can have your Essbase Analytics handle your reporting side by side, your consolidation and close process. So really optimized design, as well as provides high performance and real-time turnaround in terms of your reporting. Another nice kind of feature as you look at leveraging Essbase in the cloud is it does offer data sync. So data sync is a way to sync Essbase with other data sources, but provide drill-through capability back to those sources, whether that's a file or a relational table or Oracle BI solution sitting on top of Essbase and drilling right through to relational detail. So you really have a lot of design flexibility because, again, it's a platform as a service. And with that platform as a service, you can design all of your data warehousing and operational data modeling needs side by side with Essbase, all under Oracle Analytics Cloud. In addition, you have a lot of flexibility to link cubes together and link data models together with the new XREF, XWrite capability that you can leverage within the instances. And it also includes full automation capabilities that we're going to touch on today. Also, keep in mind that the deployment and the usage of Essbase in the cloud is based on a monthly subscription. So you have a lot of flexibility of how you deploy it, whether it's an enterprise deployment or a standard deployment. And as mentioned last week, you can pick your shape size for your CPUs and memories and really optimize the performance, because under the covers, it's built with the Exalytics engineered system. So the performance is has been spectacular so far in some of our test cases that we've done. So kind of moving on here, today we really wanted to, in our demonstration, kind of show you how all of this comes together in the cloud. And Jay's going to walk you through a presentation of how you design and set up different storage options, how you build and maintain the Essbase applications, how you handle calculations, how you use Smart View and do drill-through reports, how you set up the command line utilities. So the flexibility in the product to design, how you want to store the data and integrate the data via your cube storage, as well as how you leverage hybrid aggregation out of the box and determine if you wanted to have a hybrid model within the design. Jay's also going to spend some time showing you the options for building and maintaining your dimensions. So it'll be important as an existing user or as a potentially new user to look at the different options of how you maintain and build the applications. And Jay's going to go through several examples for us today to show us how that works. He's also going to jump in and show us how you set up business rules and calculations. So we've set up some examples today to show you how you can have an allocation cube side by side your financial reporting cube. And you can run allocations, and via either a partition or via location aliases, you can tie those cubes together and have your allocation processes automatically update your profitability and reporting applications. So we're going to go through some examples of just how you set up, calculations, as well as how you tie cubes together. And then lastly, definitely want to highlight how you can drill through from Essbase to other data sources. So Jay's going to show you, how you can drill from a report in Smart View, back through to the underlying source data and, pull back transactional data, or as another option, which we're going to begin to discuss in the next webinar, you can also use data visualization and Oracle BI right on top of Essbase for analytics and drill back all the way to your Oracle database services or source data that you brought into the Oracle Analytics Cloud. One quick point I wanted to make on the migration, and this is just emphasizing again what we had talked about last week. You have two options if you're an existing Essbase user. You can bring those into the cloud via a utility that I mentioned, the Essbase utility, as well as the application workbook utility. So we can definitely help you in that process. If you have any questions on those utilities, we can jump into that and help you through that process. So before we jump into the demo, just a couple other quick migration considerations that I wanted to highlight. One is around security. Security is always, key in this environment. And the nice thing about the Oracle Analytics Cloud is it does provide, that entire security layer that you would expect with SSL and firewalls and VPN services, but specifically to Essbase, you can look at how you set up your existing security as well as how you automate that process. We can also assist you with performance benchmarking and testing services. So we've helped a number of clients that are kind of just kicking the tires with the cloud, if you will, and want to understand how it performs. We've done performance benchmarking and testing to show clients, how your Essbase applications would perform in the cloud. Lastly, we also, will, and we're going to talk about this in the next webinar as well, but we also provide the ability to help you with your reports. If you have existing standalone reports and you wanted to look at options of bringing those into the cloud, we offer assistance and kind of what your options are, and we're going to talk about that a lot in the next webinar session. And lastly, just wanted to highlight one other point around automation. You can fully automate your processes with Oracle Analytics Cloud, so just keep that in mind. There's a number of options here, and I don't want to, it can get a little confusing, but we can kind of work through that confusion for you and help you understand exactly how you could automate your solution. But we're really recommending Oracle Data Sync, as well as using the new command line interfaces and the scripting that would be required to automate the solutions. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jay, and we're going to spend the rest of the time today giving you some live demonstrations. Jay, take over.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Michelle. Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning if you're on the West Coast like I am. So essentially, there's three ways to build an application in a cube, and we're going to walk through those three ways. The first is through a flat file. The second is manually or from scratch. And then the third way is through a structured format, like the application workbook. And a flat file, let me pull one up here for you. This can be used as the initial step to create a cube. But then it can be exported, edited, and imported back in a template form to create a more controllable application, which we'll cover a little bit later. So when using a flat file like this, dimensions are laid out across the top, and the corresponding metadata is beneath. And this is a typical type of spreadsheet that you would pull from a relational database or from an ERP, or even within a finance or budget office. You can create something like this on the fly to be able to build a cube with. So with this type of file, there's essentially two ways that we can build the cube. The first is through Cube Designer, which is a Smart View extension. And then the second is by importing it into the web interface itself. So we're going to start with the Cube Designer. So again, the Cube Designer is a Smart View extension that you do have to install. So the first step is open up your spreadsheet, go into Cube Designer. You're going to click Transform Data, and then a wizard will pop up. Notice that it takes the name of the file as the application name, and it takes the name of the worksheet as the cube name. And you can change these to whatever you want to change it to. And then if you click on Preview Data, let's try it one more time here. Well, if you click on Preview Data, you're able to make modifications in a tree view format. So I'm actually going to try reopening it again, and let's see if we can do that here. 1 second. Oh, okay, today's just technical difficulty day. But you can make modifications to define dimension hierarchies, measures. You could even define which columns you want to leave out by dragging and dropping those columns, headers beneath skipped. Once your outline is satisfactory, then you're going to go ahead and click Run, and that will build the cube. The cube can also be created by importing a flat file through the web interface. So if I go to my home page here and I click on import, and I select the flat file, again, you'll see that the application name and the cube name are populated. You'll get a message here if you already have, let's say, an existing application and you're trying to build another cube. You'll get that message, so you can change the names how you see fit. Build option, we're creating a cube, and since we don't have any data or any calc scripts to execute, those are grayed out. But one big difference that you'll notice here versus what you would have seen if the cube designer was working, I'm able to choose my cube type. Within OAC Essbase or Essbase in the cloud, BSO is always the default, with hybrid cubes enabled. So that's why the hybrid BSO is checked here. If I wanted an ASO cube or an aggregate storage option cube, then I would just check ASO, and then I don't have the option for the hybrid. So for those of you who are new to Essbase and aren't really familiar with the types of cubes, the BSO or block storage, those cubes allow us to do really powerful calculations. They have a really robust calculation engine. We can perform, allocations and all kinds of things within those cubes. There are a few challenges like performance issues. So as the cube begins to grow, as we add a lot of dimensions and members into that cube, we start to see some performance issues. On the other hand, the aggregate storage option, that's designed specifically to deal with requirements for very large, sparse data sets. So high number of dimensions, thousands of members. And the ASO cubes use a different type of storage mechanism, which allows for improved aggregation time. So we don't need those strong, powerful calculations because everything's just aggregating to our upper level. And then finally, the hybrid is basically a combination of a BSO and an ASO. It supports the complex calculations for BSO, but we can tag sparse dimensions as dynamic and get faster performance. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. So once we decide what kind of cube we want, then we hit deploy and close, and our cube is built. So if you don't have a flat file, then you can build the application and cube from scratch. And how you would do that, from the home page here, you would just click on create from the flipboard. And again, if you're building a brand new application, you can enter that application name. If you're building a cube within an existing application, you can pick which application you want to attach that cube to. You have the option, again, because BSO is default, right? You do not have to choose that you want a BSO cube, but you do need to choose if you want an ASO cube. So let's just put in, let's say, sample test, and then we'll call our cube sales. And now here's the option for an ASO, if I want an ASO cube. You can also select if you want duplicate member names, and then if you have a BSO cube, there's scenario management as well. The final way to build a cube is through Cube Designer. And again, that is the Smart View extension. So I'm going to go back into my Excel document here. And I'm going to click Cube Designer. And over here you see I have 5 tabs. So cube, this is where I define an application and the cube name, just like we've seen on all the other methods, as well as the dimensions that I want in the cube. So I'm going to go ahead and call this, because this is going to be the shell of a cube. So I'm going to say shell. You can still call this sales. And I'll pop in a couple dimensions. We'll say account, period, years, and maybe products. Okay. Settings. This is where we can put in additional details about the cube, such as alias tables, cube properties, dynamic time series setup, and attribute settings. We can also select if we want an ASO cube versus VSO. Text list, so on and so forth. Dimensions. Once I enter the dimensions on the cube tab, I have access through this dropdown of all those dimensions, and now I can select specific dimension properties, such as dimension type, dense sparse setting, dimension build method, and which fields are shown on the dimension worksheet for each dimension. And I'll show you that in just a little bit. So for example, for account, we're going to make that accounts. This will be a dense, and I can just kind of go through and select the appropriate settings. So we'll make that dense as well. The last two are data and calc. The data tab allows for creation of a data worksheet. If there is data, the workbook will be populated with that data. If there's no data, then the cube will be empty. And then last is calc. This is basically a blank canvas where I can create a calc script right now to be uploaded into the cube during the build process. So after I fill out all of my tabs here, I'm going to click To Sheet. And what that's going to do is it's going to populate a application workbook. And here are all the tabs detailing all the properties that I selected over here in my cube designer. So here's the application name, there's the database name, here's some of my dimensions I created, the cube settings, if I have any generation levels, that will go here. Account dimension, each dimension has its own worksheet. So this would be account, period, years, and products. Once everything looks good, I'm going to go ahead and click Build Cube. First, I have to save it. And then here's my option to create the cube. Again, I don't have any data sheets and I don't have any calc, so I don't need to put those in. So now I hit Run. And then the shell will be created. So once the cube is created, there's multiple ways to review the outline. So if we go back to the web interface, and I apologize, something's going on with my cube designer today. We'll navigate to the application and the cube. So here's the copy of sample table that I first created with my flat file. So I'm going to go ahead and drill down, and here's my cube, and I click on Outline. And so here I can review all the following properties, like the dimension name, the member ID, the statistics to ensure that the metadata was uploaded correctly. And so C stands for child count, D is for descendants, generation, and level. I can also look at dimension type, dimension storage type, data storage type, time balance, get all the properties are here for me. I can click on a dimension to drill down further. So for example, if I click on measures, here's those members that was in my file. And again, statistics kind of tells me where I am and how many children or descendants are associated with that member. And again, any properties that I might have set in the build process. The other option is to review the cube in Smart View. So if I was to click a new window here, and we'll go to my sales ad hoc. I think it logged me out here.
Jay, I think you've lost your connection. You might have to just shut down all of your Excel sessions and start over. I'd probably shut all your Excel sessions down and just open up a new version of Excel.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
You've lost your connection here.
All right, so let's try this again here. All right, so let's get into Smart View. Bear with me for 1 second as I log in. So I'm going to go to the flat file application that I created. And here's my sales cube. And honk. There we go. Okay, so here's are the dimensions that I had in my cube. And then I can drill down. I can go to my member selection. And let's say I want to look at 16. I can look at regions. I can send dimensions into my point of view, just make it a little bit easier to sort of navigate through my report. And then as I zoom into my measures, I start to see some data. And I can slice and dice this however I want based on my dimensions here. I can pivot, I can move things to the columns, move things to the rows. We'll get into this a little bit more next week as we look at Smart View reporting. But this is a good way to just kind of validate that my data and my metadata from my flat file was successfully imported in. So once the cubes are built, then it's time to start maintaining those dimension hierarchies. And dimension data can be loaded to Essbase cubes via manual updates through the web interface. We can import the application workbook through both the cube designer as well as the web interface. We can run a job using a rules file and an updated text file. We can execute a load data option from the cube designer. And then we can also import a dimension flat file via MAXL and use in conjunction with a rules file. So the first way I want to show you is the manual updates. And manual updates aren't the most efficient way to handle bulk updates, but it is handy for smaller changes. So I'm going to go to my OAC demo sample here. And I'm going to click on my cube, and then I'm going to click on outline. And the first thing you need to do when you get into your shell of a cube is you want to click lock and edit. And now from here, I can click on a dimension that I might have brought in via some other method, go to the manage icon, and I can add a child, I can add a sibling. I can also go to the properties and change any of the dimension level properties. Some of the same criteria exist that you see in on-prem Essbase and some of the other EPM solutions. Use no more than 1,024 characters when naming dimensions, members, or aliases. And when we get into members and you did not check the allow duplicate member names, then each member has to be unique. So those are things that you have to kind of keep in mind as you're building out your dimensions and your members manually through the web interface. So the second way to go ahead and build your or maintain your hierarchies is through the application workbook. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up a new window, go back to my cube designer, and I'm going to export a cube. And let's go back to my Demo sample here. If I have data, I can include that data or calc scripts as well. So here is now in the application workbook format, the cube, and I can add the members to dimensions that I've already set up. So here, let's say I want to build out this quarter one hierarchy here. So I'll just go there. Maybe we'll go March. You can even add quarter two as well. And there we go. If by chance there is not a property that I need to have in my workbook, if I go back to Cube Designer, I can populate my Cube Designer with my application workbook by selecting from sheet. And then I can go to a dimension. So let's say for years, I want to add a comment. I would check that box, hit to sheet, and then the comment row or column would appear. And now I can add additional comments that will show up in the web interface as well. Here you can also add formulas, and there's a formula editor here. So I can click on formula editor. I can use any of the functions here to help me build out my member formula. I can validate and then save. So once my cube and application is built out through the application workbook, I then go to build cube. First, I have to save. And now I can update my cube. Now notice it doesn't say create cube. If I chose create cube, that would basically wipe out what I created and recreate the cube. Or I can just update it with my changes. If you have data, there are some options here. You can retain all of your data. You can retain your input data, so any data that is inputted on the upper or lower levels. You can retain leaf data, so that's all your lower level 0 data. Or you can remove all data. So because we don't have any data, I would just select retain all data, and then I would hit run. If it's a success, you'll get a message saying the build was successful. If there's any warnings or errors, you'll get that message as well, and then you can go to the job window here to view what the errors were so you can fix them. The other way to maintain and build our dimensions is through dimension build rules. And with dimension build rules, I can add new dimensions of members. I can remove or change existing dimensions or members, or modify attributes and calculations automatically. And there are essentially 3 primary build methods. There's generation builds, there's level builds, and there's parent-child. And so I'll quickly here show you the parent-child build method. So we're going to go back to our interface here. So I have a file in a text format that is parent-child format, and also has an alias column. And I'm going to build out my products dimension here. So the first step when you do that is you want to go to scripts, go to rules, and you're going to click create. Now I already have one here, so we're just going to kind of look at how it's built out. Give it a name, alias table if you need to use one. Go to dimensions, what dimension are you trying to build, and then here's some dimension properties associated with that. Add member, because this is parent-child, I want to make sure that I chose parent-child. This generation, I can click generation and so forth. The field tab determines the field properties for the data load. So parent-child alias, and then here's the type that match that. And then the data source, basically tells Essbase if there's a header row, any delimiters, or if there's any field edits. Because I don't have any, I can leave that blank. I'll verify, and then I'll go ahead and save it. Once that's done, the next step is to take that text file and bring it into the cloud. So you go to Files, I will browse and then upload it in. And then once I do that, I can go to Jobs, click New Job, and I could run that dimension build rules file. So we'll go to dimension build, find the script that I created, and then find the file. Click execute. So once you do that, you'll notice that it appears instantaneously. I can refresh, I can auto refresh. If I get a green check, that means it's successful. If I get a successful with information or an X, like I did right now, then that means there's a problem. I can look at job details to see what the issue was. Got a couple of things going on at once here, and then we can build it that way.
Yeah, Jay, I just wanted to jump in real quick and just highlight again the options that we're showing you here to build dimensions through rules or through the application workbook. Just keep in mind, you can also load your data directly from the Oracle database. So if you have some tables set up inside of Oracle and you wanted to automate the process of having your dimension updates take place, you can also have your source data directly in the Oracle Cloud in an Oracle database, and we can, using data sync as well as an automation script, we can update those dimensions directly from Oracle. You can also keep in mind, this is more of an advanced option, but if you have data DRM cloud or called data management cloud, you can also have a separate tool to maintain all your dimensions and hierarchies, and have a common source of all your dimensions and hierarchies, and you can export those out into files, and you can have a script process to update from a DRM solution, a master data management solution, or a cloud data management solution. So there are options here to fully automate this. With today's session, we just wanted to show you kind of the old-fashioned Essbase ways of how you can create cubes, on the fly. And the nice thing about the flexibility here is, you can really, through Excel, work with any data set and create small applications to do analysis or data visualization on, kind of on the fly as you need them. Obviously, you're only going to create smaller cubes through the application workbook. You're not going to create any sort of, large data set. If you're going to look at a larger model with multiple gigs of Essbase data that's tied back into your Oracle database, you would leverage either Oracle Data Sync or a scripting process to update your Essbase application. So go ahead, Jay.
All right. Yeah, thanks for that, Jason. I just want to try to see if I can get this to work one quick time. Yep, something's going on. Okay, so once we get the dimension built out, then it's time to load data. And so real quickly, there's multiple ways to load data. We can use the application workbook, again, through the web interface or the cube designer. We can run a job using a rules file. We can execute a load data option in cube designer. We could import a flat file, again, via data sync or through MAXL. And we can submit data through SmartView. So just real quickly, I'll show you just through the rules file how we would do data. So again, just like what we did with the product dimension or a dimension build, we will create a data load rule. Click it here. So data load, give it a name. You can pick load options. You can flip a sign based on an assigned UDA. You can also clear data for a specific intersection by loading the data file, utilizing this section here. Again, all ways that if you're familiar with Essbase, this should all be familiar to you. So here's the dimensions, and then I have all the fields in my file, and then again, data source, which just tells Essbase if there's a header row, which I have, and then I'm skipping a line. So once we sort of define that rule, we upload our text file that has all of our data. So I have one right here. Get that in there, and then we'll go to jobs and click new job, data load. We're going to use our act load and load actuals. Let's keep our fingers crossed that it works this time.
So you saw when Jay did that, he did it from a flat file again. Of course, you can embed SQL into that as well. So if you wanted to pull the data directly from an Oracle database or even reference a SQL database, you can embed the SQL into the load rule as well to pull that data versus just loading the data from a flat file. So again, it just comes down to your volume of data. And if you're a very large organization, for example, a lot of the larger banks, their data volumes are so large that they can't build off of flat files. They have to have an automated process that builds directly from the source data. So we can definitely do that with the Analytics Cloud as well. Go ahead, Jay.
Yep. Okay. So we got a success. So what I'm going to show now is now that we have that data in, how it comes through with the application workbook. So I'm going to go to private. I'm going to export this particular workbook. Include data. Now even include the calculation scripts. And one thing to note here, once the data is loaded, I can now update it within the application workbook. So here's my data, and it's on a data sheet. I can make changes here as long as I stay sort of within the parameters set up on the top here in my columns. I could take columns out, change data, and then reload. Over here in the definitions, notice the file name is different, as well as the rule name. And the same applies with dimension builds. Behind the scenes, when we use the application workbook to build our dimensions and to load data, it creates individual rule files for the dimension builds and for the data. So the advantage of that is I don't have to use the application workbook to build out dimensions. I can use what it already created to update single dimensions, as well as data. I can just use what it created to update the data. I don't have to go back through and use the same process that I just showed you. Additionally, through Excel, I can go to Analyze, and I can create a ad hoc report. And so here are my dimensions, and now we can slice and dice this to try to find our data. So member selector, let's go current year. And actuals, we have departments. And I can continue to drill down until we find our data. So in the essence of time, we're going to kind of skip ahead to calculations. Once we have our data loaded, once we have our hierarchies built out, we can start to create calc scripts. And one thing to keep in mind, again, if you're new to Essbase, is that if you have an ASO cube or a hybrid cube with the upper level sparse dimension set to dynamic, then there's really no need to create calc scripts. Everything's going to aggregate and automatically roll up. However, because of the BSO's powerful calculation engine, if you do have a BSO cube, then you can create a calculation script or a calc script, which is simply a sequential series of commands and equations and formulas that allows us to do everything from run allocation processes down to aggregate specific subsets of a specific cube. So here's just a few examples of some calc scripts. The most simplest one that we can probably create is a calc all, right? And a calc all, it aggregates all the dimensional hierarchies in the outline. It calculates member formulas, performs time balancing, all very, very quickly. So within the web interface, we can use the text editor to create these calc scripts. We can build them in Notepad and then save as a CSC file and bring that into the cloud. You'll notice here all the calc scripts have the CSC at the end, so we can save that text file as this type of file and bring it in. And then to execute any script that we create, we go to Jobs, we hit New Job, and then we can go to Calc Execution, and we just select the script here. So again,
so for those of you wondering, just to jump in real quick, Jay, so on the calculation scripts, for those of you that are existing Essbase users and or potentially new ones, all of your calculations are managed here centrally. So we'll bring them all over. If you were to migrate to the cloud, all your existing business rules and calculations for Essbase would come as is. And of course, within the cloud, you can then use the calculation manager to build new allocation rules or new aggregation rules or formulas on metrics. So really, as I mentioned earlier in the webinar, Essbase is the world's best calculator, so you can write your calculations to really do anything within the Essbase engine, and you just have a lot of flexibility to design them different ways now with the default hybrid, as well as leveraging the classic ASO and BSO approach. So go ahead, Jay. I think you're going to now jump in and kind of show how once you've loaded your data, if your source data, and just to give you a use case of what Jay is going to show you here next, is you can do drill through reports as well for Essbase. So if you've set up your underlying source data to, let's say, have transactional details or journal entry details, or just a lower level of detail than what you load into Essbase, you can set up drill through reports so that when you refresh the Essbase data, you can then drill back from Essbase, let's say, to the transaction details that make that number up. The typical use case that we talk about a lot is general ledger data. So if you're analyzing your P&L statement and you're looking at expenses or maybe a cash account, you can drill right into that specific account and pull back the transaction detail underneath that account. So go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, that's right. And so to set that up, there's a few things that we have to do on the front end. You can set up, there's 4 connections that you can choose. Oracle database, you can drill through to a file, whether it's Excel or a delimited file. You can drill into an Essbase cube or Oracle BI. So once you set that up, then you go down to your data source. You set that up as well. And there's a little SQL involved just to be able to call the columns that you want to pull and to drill through to, depending on the connection that you chose. And once you get all that set up, then you go into your specific cube and you're going to set up your how you want your drill through report to look. So for example, go into my FinPlan cube here. Got a couple of examples, and so I'll just kind of show you real quick. You give it a name, you give it what data source you're tapping into, and then what columns do I want to show. So in this particular case, the entity ID, the transaction number, period, and then the drillable regions. You're going to put that down in here. Once you get that all set up, then you're able to go into SmartView, pull up the specific account, the specific entity, and up here there's a drill through button. We're going to click on that. We're going to click the report we want to show, and then it will create a drill through on a separate tab based off of the selections that I chose. So here's the entity ID, there's transaction, period, count, and balance. Now,
yeah, so in that example, we drilled through on a cash account. It would work the same way on an expense account, but these are the underlying checking transactions on that particular cash account. So, behind the scenes, we've set up the ability to drill back through to transaction detail at the account level within Essbase.
Right, that's right. All right, so next is connecting cubes. So Jason had talked about partitions and using location aliases with either xref or xwrite functions. How we would get that set up is if we go to partitions here, we can select either transparent or replicated partition. And for those who are new, setting up a partition is great because, simply put, a partition is just a region of a cube that is shared with another cube. So the transparent allows access to data from the data source as though it was stored in our data target, and then replicated is a copy of a segment data source that's stored in the data target.
Yeah, and when you think about partitions and using partitions, and or just using ways to kind of link cubes together, or xref, xwrite between cubes, the use case is really when you have things like allocations or metric calculations happening, or you have a large volume of data and you wanted to separate your data out, let's say by region or by product. You can tie all those cubes back together with partitions. So it looks like, Jay, you're having some, I know we're having some demo issues here. It looks like you got logged out again. So partitioning and location aliases are unique to the cloud in that they work within an instance, but they also allow you to design more efficient applications, but also bring data together dynamically that may be stored across multiple cubes.
Right. So yeah, unfortunately having some technical difficulties, but that's okay. I can segue to talking about some of the utilities, and maybe this will pop up and I can show you again the partitions. So we had mentioned before the command line interface, MAXL, the DBX tool. The command line interface can be used to automate several processes and really comes in handy when you're trying to build and maintain cubes, such as loading dimensions, loading data, deleting files, and uploading those files. So here's an example of setting up a command prompt and being able to run commands to, again, load data, clear data. So here's an example of a clear application. My auto fin plan, the auto's cube, clearing the data. It happened instantaneously. I can easily throw in a command to load up that data, all right here through the command prompt. Additionally, with MAXL, that, again, if you're used to Essbase, you know MAXL. For those who don't, it's simply a scripting language that you can use in both on-prem and with OAC Essbase. And some of the common actions for MAXL, very similar to command line interface: loading data, build a dimension, running calculations. Really, the sky's the limit. It's very, very, very flexible. And a lot of what the actions you perform in MAXL, you perform right here within the command line interface. So I can load a file, a MAXL shell file into the cloud, that I can call upon that file, run whatever action it might be, whether it's a calc script or, again, loading data, building a dimension. And
yeah, so just to jump in, Jay, so you know, we just wanted to highlight the fact that for those of you that are more advanced, you know, or administrators, that you can, you know, use the command line to script out and automate loads with the Oracle Analytics Cloud. So it does give you that flexibility to set up the command line options. You also have a full API available too that you can go back to in terms of, you know, building your own integration, custom integration using the API. So it gives you a lot of flexibility, and we just wanted to highlight that in terms of your ability to build and automate the processes. So with that, why don't we go ahead and wrap up today's session. We appreciate everyone joining us today. And I did want to just make a quick comment about our session for next week before we wrap up today, as well as have an opportunity to address any questions that are out there that may come up. But we appreciate y'all joining us again today, and apologize, we've had some technical difficulties here today, but we'll try to address that on the next one. But, you know, as you think about Oracle Analytics Cloud, again, just want to recap with, you know, making the point that this is a platform as a service, and everything is provided as part of that platform to not only design and build your Essbase applications, but also integrate that with Oracle BI or other analytics types of reporting, or integrate it back to, of course, your ERP solutions, etc. So it really gives you a cost-efficient as well as, you know, a very quick way to deploy Essbase by leveraging Oracle's platform as a service that provides everything you need. As we look towards next week, we're going to go ahead and you know, jump into some of the topics we mentioned today around how you manage your reports within the Oracle Analytics Cloud, and we're going to show you what's called management reporting. And for those of you that are familiar with Essbase, you may have, or Hyperion in general, you'll be familiar with financial reports and web analysis documents, etc. Well, we're going to show you how you can bring those over into the performance reporting cloud service and leverage the management reporting capability with your Essbase applications. And that's a very important topic, because everything we showed you today is more kind of ad hoc, manual approach to reporting, where you use Smart View to drill into the data, do some analysis, drill all the way down to a particular expense account or an asset account, and even drill back through to the source transactions. But you know, you also need fully formatted reports, report books, report packages, and, you know, highly formatted reports. So in the next session, we're going to cover those aspects of the Oracle Analytics Cloud. So appreciate everyone joining today. At this point, we'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Jason and Jay. If you haven't already, we now invite you to submit your questions in the chat window at the bottom of the webinar control panel. First question is, what are the different integration options to load data from PBCS to OAC Essbase?
Oh, good question. So the planning and budgeting cloud service is a, you know, kind of a complementary solution to the Oracle Analytics Cloud. But you would leverage, to automate that process, we'd use a tool called EPM Automate that is provided with your PBCS solution. And we would have a process that exports your level 0 data and creates a file. And then we would have a process either with a load rule or with an application workbook process that would then be refreshed directly into Essbase. Now, you know, you could either do that, you know, manually by, you know, creating the file and loading it in, or, you know, a better design would be to automate that and script it out. So we would use EPM Automate and the command line interface to automate that process. And the nice thing, as I mentioned earlier in the session, it really complements not only planning and budgeting, but financial consolidations, because with the hybrid model, you know, you basically, within a matter of seconds, you can refresh your reporting databases in Essbase side by side your planning and budgeting applications. So good question.
Second question, what are the results of your performance benchmarking?
Good question. So we worked with a couple different clients, but one in particular here in the North Carolina area, they had a large Essbase financial reporting application. When I say large, it's wasn't that large. It was about 10 gig of Essbase data, 5-page files. So it wasn't huge, 4.5-page files, and they also had some allocation cubes where they used Essbase to do some allocation processes. And we just did some basic benchmarking where we did, replicated their processes. And to do a full load and calculation of their entire GL data with 10 years of history was about a 30-minute calculation on their current Essbase environment. And in the cloud, it was about 28 minutes. And that was a traditional block storage application. But the nice thing is we were able to use the hybrid model and test that same application. And it literally came down to a 1.5 minute calculation, because all we did was load the data, and then everything else was dynamic in the cloud. So there are a lot of design considerations that go into how you optimize your performance. But in this particular use case, a full load and calc under an old block storage approach was very similar, 30 minutes to 28 minutes. And that was the entire cube with all history. Now, an incremental update was just a couple of minutes is all that took. And that was really the same. Their on-premise server was like 2.5 minutes, 2 minutes, and the cloud was a little bit quicker than that. And then their allocation processes, they only ran in about 4 or 5 minutes. They weren't real complex allocations. And then those ran, about the same in the cloud as well. So I think you should expect the same performance that you have today at a minimum, but you also will see a significant performance gain on larger data sets, especially, if you design it with the right shape size. So some of it's a cost-benefit analysis in terms of how many CPUs and how you leverage multi-threading and calc parallel and leveraging multiple processors to speed up calculations. So the shape size and the use case I was just talking about was just 2 OCPUs, and that's kind of the performance we saw. And as I mentioned earlier too, go ahead, Michelle. Next question.
Next question. Can REST APIs be used to update or build metadata in OAC?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, sorry, sometimes I'm a little long-winded when I'm giving answers to questions, but that was a good question too. Yes, you can use the REST API to update an application within OAC. So for those of you that are custom programmers or wanting to develop your own applications, you can use the REST API with Essbase in the cloud.
Next question. If you go to Oracle Analytics Cloud Essbase, is it a requirement that all of your data be in the cloud or on an Oracle database, or can you store your data on-premise?
Good question. And we talked about that a little bit throughout the session, but you can store your data on-premise. So you really have the options. You have the best of both worlds with the Oracle Analytics Cloud, which is nice. You can store your source data on-premise in a typical, Oracle database server or Microsoft SQL Server database, and then you can refresh that data directly into Essbase in the cloud and not store it. Or you can leverage the database instance, the database cloud service that comes with OAC, and you can actually load that data directly into the cloud. So it's really a case-by-case basis, and we'd have to have some further discussions about your specific environment and where it would make sense to potentially leave data in an on-premise environment versus, actually bringing that data into the cloud.
Next question. What are the alternatives of report script in OAC to extract targeted data such as budget or forecast in a CSV or text file?
Yeah, another good question. great to have some really good questions. So with a report script, that's not supported in the cloud. So for those of you that are longtime Essbase users, you may be familiar with the old-fashioned report scripts. Those can be replaced a couple of different ways, but the typical way is to use a data export calculation, and you can export data to a file, or you can export data directly into a database. So with Essbase in the cloud, you have calculation commands that allow you to write data out to a flat file or write data to a database. So we would redesign that and replace that report script with a Essbase data export calculation.
Next question, can we use a desktop outline viewer instead of the web interface? So to manage your dimensions within Essbase, as we went through the demonstration today, there's basically two ways. You either have to manage your dimensions directly in the cloud via the interface that Jay was showing you to look at your hierarchies and dimensions, or you can look at your hierarchies and dimensions through the application workbook. There is no desktop client with Essbase in the cloud. And we mentioned this on the last session as well, but Essbase Administration Services, as people have known it over the years, is gone. There is no more client option or client-side tool to manage your Essbase dimensions and hierarchies directly. You either use the Essbase Cloud interface, or you can use the application workbook interface we showed you today. Next question, can Essbase log files be accessed via Windows Secure Copy or PuTTY from the backend? Yeah, good question. Yes, they can. So Bob Khalil talked about that a little bit in the last session, and PuTTY is definitely supported. You can view your log files right at the command line, and you can also log right into the Linux command line as an administrator and view your log files that way. You can also view your log files through the Oracle application interface. Next question, can Oracle Essbase Cloud integrate to on-premise Oracle DBS? Yes. So that was kind of similar to the previous question. So if you have data on-premise, you can integrate your Essbase in the cloud with that source data. And there's multiple options of how you do that, but yes, you can do that, and would definitely love to talk to you more about that. Next question, with the application workbook, can you fully automate an Essbase cube? Oh, good question. Yeah, so I mentioned this a couple times, but the building and maintaining of your Essbase cubes through the application workbook is meant to be more of a standalone process within Excel, not an automated process. So when you're using the application workbook, you're managing your dimensions manually through Excel tabs. As Jay was showing you, you have your tab for your product dimension, your entity dimension, your department dimension, etc. So that's meant to maintain those dimensions more in a manual fashion right inside of Excel, not in an automated fashion. So good question. And last question, where can you find cube properties in the web interface? Oh, good question. Jay, you want to jump in and quickly highlight where the cube properties can be viewed?
Yeah, sure, I can take that. So if you click on the application and then the cube within the homepage of the user interface, there's under settings, there's a properties tab. And if you click on the properties tab, you'll see basic properties, those advanced properties, which allows you to check whether you want to aggregate missing values, create blocks on equations, to pass calculations, things like that. And then there's an outline properties section that basically go into detail. Is this a block storage? Some of the things you can't change. So if you change those things up front when you built the cube, they're hard coded. You can't change it. But some things you can, like the date format, the value of prefixes and suffixes, true member names, some of the calculation dimension names, things like that, things that we're familiar with on-prem. We can do all that within the settings button for that particular cube.
Okay, thank you,
Thanks,
Jason
Jay.
and Jay. Yeah, I believe we've covered all of our questions. Is there anything else you'd like to cover before we wrap up today?
No, thank you again for joining, and we'll look forward to catching up again next week when we dive into the reporting topic.
Great. We hope to meet with you again next Thursday for our third webinar in this series, Migrate Your Essbase Financial Reports, Web Analysis, and Smart View Reports to OAC Essbase. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your day.